Aloha Kako. Good afternoon. This is your Committee on Education. Today's date is February the 16th. It is 2:00 p.m. and we are in conference room 309. We have about a half dozen bills on the agenda today. First up, we have HB 961, HD1. This is the proposal to help expand our high quality early learning opportunities for all 3 and 4-year-olds for families that want it. First up, we have the Office of the Lieutenant Governor, Lieutenant Governor Luke, in support. Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, aloha. Thanks to the members of this committee and many of the legislators. Last year we provided funding for expansion of pre-K, and this year, thanks to many of you who participated in the press release rollout, we have launched Ready Keiki. Part of Ready Keiki is not just building the infrastructure on the public side, but also to take care of low-income families on the private model. So this bill does several things. Just briefly, it expands EOEL services from just 4-year-olds to 3 and 4-year-olds. Also provide preschool open doors funding for not just 4-year-olds, but also 3 and 4-year-olds, and increases the subsidies on preschool open doors. Preschool open doors, the average amount of subsidies is about $650. During the pandemic, it increased the subsidy to about $900. But as you can imagine, some of these preschools are costing about $1,500, and $1,500 is equivalent to somebody's rent. And so because it is a social equity issue, we felt through this bill we wanted to expand. And thank you again for your continued effort to ensure that 50% of our preschool or 3 or 4-year-olds who are left behind right now are taken care of. So mahalo.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Next, we have testimony in support from Chair Peters, ELB Board.
Thank you, Chair Woodson. The Early Learning Board stands on its testimony and support.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Next, we have EOEL providing testimony and support.
Aloha, Chair Woodson and Vice Chair, and members of the committee. EOEL stands on our written testimony and support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have DHS in support. Director Bates, our representative.
Good afternoon, Chair Woodson, Vice Chair Martin, and members of the committee. My name is Stacy Tonouchi from the Department of Human Services, representing Director Betts. We stand on our written testimony and support this bill. If I may, I'd just like to respectfully highlight the department's request. Given the continuing economic impacts of COVID-19 on childcare facilities' ability to maintain sufficient staff levels, DHS suggests changing the accreditation requirement to be voluntary until the childcare workforce has stabilized. So thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have University of Hawaii providing comments. Not present. We have Hawaii Association of Independent Schools providing testimony and support here in person.
Aloha, I'm Deanna Dolier, representing the Hawaii Association of Independent Schools. We stand on our testimony in support of the House Bill 961, and I'm happy to answer additional questions as need be. I'd like to pay special attention to the accreditation recommendation to expand accreditation entities that might be recognized for those recipients of preschool open doors. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have the Democratic, we have Kamehameha Schools providing testimony and support. Thank you for being here. We have the Stonewall Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii providing testimony and support, available via Zoom.
Good afternoon. Michael Galoyu, Jr., Chair of the Stonewall Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. We stand in full support of this bill. The one thing we do ask is making sure that any school that makes use of these funds be treated as a public accommodation and not be allowed to discriminate, just like they would do if they were to be a grant and aid. On a personal note, I will say, as a relative of my sister's a early child care provider, education person, the idea that it's going to stabilize anytime soon is not actually true. There's a problem getting early child care providers, educators, as there is maintaining teachers for our public schools. So the idea that it's going to stabilize anytime soon is, so we think everybody should be, we shouldn't extend that indefinitely. So on that note, we encourage you to pass this bill and encourage that their safeguards are there for everybody. Mahalo.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next, we have HA Coalition providing testimony and support in person.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Sherry Nakamura, Director of HA Coalition. We'd like to stand on our written testimony and support. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we have Early Childhood Action Strategies providing testimony and support. We have Commit to Keiki in support. We have 2 individual testimonies, both in support. Is there anyone else wishing to provide testimony on this bill? HB 961 HD1. Please come up.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. If I did not, for some reason, had a problem with our testimony, I will get a written testimony into you folks. My name is Kale Purilitz. I'm the Director of Early Learning and Health Policy with Hawaii Children's Action Network Speaks. We stand in support of this bill, but offer some comments. One of the things that I just want to highlight for you is that we appreciate the attention to universal access to preschool and early childhood education options. The important thing that we want to note is that access needs to be meaningful for families. So as HCAN speaks, and as a mother, it needs to be something that we can actually literally get our kids to, right? But also that we can afford and that we can access in that way. So some of the things, and I will get you the testimony, sorry, there was a glitch or something. Some of the suggestions we had made was to ensure that there are, when we say meaningful access as far as cost, there are very low cost or no cost options for families. And so ensuring that the reimbursement rate is high enough for providers, the economics of childcare is pretty much unworkable. The Department of Treasury said so. And so we need to make sure that we are having reimbursement rates at what we call the true cost of care. So one of the recommendations is to have in the bill something that would require a higher reimbursement rate, as well as requiring that to be a flat rate. So ensuring that no matter what they say the cost of care is for non-subsidy children, that it actually, that they get a rate higher than that. It doesn't matter what they set the tuition cost for non-subsidy children. The other thing is that we also just want to make sure that we are taking a look at expanded eligibility. Preschool Open Doors is a very, very useful tool for families that are in that income bracket, but there are families just beyond that are struggling. And I have sometimes been just below the bracket and just above it. So if we can include a recommendation on that for just a reassessment of eligibility and where possible to expand. And finally, I know there's a section on expansion of Executive Office on Early Learning, including 3-year-olds, and the only thing we want to mention is that when we do this, we need to make sure it's done well, so it's coming with the resources to do it well so that 3-year-olds are best served. Thank you very much, and I'm here for any questions. Mahalo.
Thank you. We actually do have your testimony. Any other testifiers?
One on Zoom, Chair.
Okay. Please go ahead on Zoom.
Aloha, this is Linda Elento. I'd like to provide some comments to this particular bill. I'm going to be reading from my phone, so I might disappear, but hopefully you should still be able to hear me. I am in support, but only with changes for this particular measure. I know similar measures have been heard, and I'd like to comment. Hawaii revised statutes include the Association of Christian Schools International, which is known as ACSI, in its definition for private schools for K through 12. I am requesting the committee consider adding ACSI for early learning to this bill, which is on page 2, line 10, and noting in its committee report reasons and considerations below. I did submit a late testimony, and I hope you are able to access it. Just a couple more points. I appreciate revising section 346-184 and that would be the area where you would add ACSI. For instance, some schools are participating with the Open Doors program, but they only get 75% of the highest reimbursement rate, even though they're double qualified with the WAF and the ACSI. So that's one concern. And also for the child care connection as well. But I wanted to point out that the reason I'm bringing up ACSI is because, find in my testimony, let's see, first of all, getting and maintaining the accreditations are costly and time consuming. And what I noticed in the particular bill as it is, it's National Early Learning Accreditation, and Section B is what's stated, and it mentions like NAEYC or as a choice or approval by the Director of Human Services. I'm very concerned with that because as it's written, ACI wouldn't be included or possibly not be included. And a preschool should not be able to plan or needs to be able to plan ahead. And they already have the certification or want the ACSI accreditation. They should be able to seek only that accreditation. And for the reason being that because they are religious, some of them do not agree with some of the beliefs that some of the National Early Learning accreditations listed include. And just a couple other comments I'd written in my testimony. Section B2, underserved or at-risk children is subjective. And my concern also is for children with disabilities. They may be able to be ready for a preschool like through age 6. But I'd like to make sure that our laws would be able to be more flexible, that like in special ed, they'd be able to be placed in preschools for those with developmental disabilities or those who are maybe in the hospital for 2 years with cancer. I appreciate your consideration. And just one last note, preschool Open Doors favors homeschool siblings because there's only an activity there is no activity level for preschool Open Doors, which I think is good because then one of the parents can be homeschooling siblings. But the child care connection I wanted to point out requires both of them to have activity level requirements. And I'm hoping in the future that program would also be able to favor homeschooled families as well. And thank you very much for the opportunity to provide testimony.
Thank you so much. We have your testimony. It looks like you're driving and reading at the same time.
No, I am
not
parked.
recommended.
Not going anywhere.
Okay. Okay, very good.
Thank you so
All right.
much.
Any other
Go to the air
testifiers?
conditioner.
Yeah, your screen is moving there. Okay, any other testifiers? Seeing none, members, any questions? I have a question go ahead. Rep. Pruso.
I have a question for the Lieutenant Governor, and maybe a couple questions. So we've been working on this teacher apprenticeship program, which is basically drawing down federal vocational funds and trying to see if those monies can also be used to prepare. We have some workforce shortage issues, so seeing if those funds can be used to also help develop the early child care. I want to say preschool workforce, but my question is, this budget doesn't really address the workforce issue, right?
It doesn't directly address the workforce issue. It peripherally addresses it because the amount that will be going, the subsidies that will be going through the families, through the providers, we're hopeful that it will address workforce and other issues. If we're trying to increase the subsidies from anywhere between $600 to $1,500, which is anticipated in this bill, that provides so much more opportunities for private providers. I think,
better
Representative,
pay.
better pay. And I think Representative Peruso, you bring up a really good point, which is not just a Hawaii issue, but nationwide issue of higher pay for childcare and preschool workers throughout, not just the state, but throughout the nation as well. So right now, in addition to preschool Open Doors, DHS is also looking at potentially using childcare block grant, which can be used for workforce differential or even trying to maximize TANF for the neediest families on how that can be used for subsidies and also for workforce. We're also working with philanthropic partners And I know the Castle Foundation, El Castle Foundation, is providing either a differential and or scholarship for kids who want to enter this field. So there's a lot of things going on. Thanks to the effort, I think a lot of the discussion has been fueled by the legislature's commitment to build more preschools, and because of that, there's a lot more discussion that's happening, so which is really exciting.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry. So there's, I think I saw 50 million in the budget for this
Yeah.
piece, and then you're talking about the private monies coming in as kind of in support. And how many families or children do you think that these monies will be able to serve?
Yeah. So with the $12 million that is already allocated by the legislature for the current preschool open doors, that provides, that takes care of about 1,400 families. So if you just look at increasing it to 4-year-olds and then increasing the subsidy from 600 to what did I say, 1,500, we can take care of a lot more families. Right now, the estimated number of families is anywhere between, like 4,000 to 5,000, but it really depends on how you maximize the number, the amount of the child care block grant, the TANF and TILNAF funding, and also the philanthropic funding.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rep. Members, any other questions? Question for DHS, please. Thank you for being here. So per your testimony, right now as the law is currently written, it says that if you are a preschool and you want to accept preschool open door funds, you have to be accredited through one of these nationally recognized affiliates. And then the law goes on further to say that the director can also approve accreditation processes as long as it's comparable to one of those entities. Do you feel that WASC is a comparable accreditation agency?
Thank you for that question, Chair. I'm speaking from the child care subsidy side. So my understanding is preschools that are accredited by WASC, it's because they're attached to a grade school or a school age program, which would most likely be attached to a private institution, educational institution. So if WASC is one of the approved accreditations for preschool open doors, it's in all likelihood funds would probably not be able to go to that provider seeking or with the
Why
WASC
is that?
accreditation. With that private educational institution, I think that was one of the comments we also attached in our testimony. And it's tied to the state constitution. So.
Okay. Also, thank you for that. And so in this proposal, it says that there is language that takes out the component that speaks to the comparability. What is the rationale behind that from DHS's perspective?
Takes out the comparability. Okay. If I may, I can.
You haven't read the bill in a while.
So the department is working on a process which would examine the types of accreditations and how it aligns with the national standards. So we have a crosswalk tool with the NAEYC and the NECPA standards and how we can kind of relate. I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
That's good.
EOEL. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Are you the primary agency that is to implement this expansion?
So expansion is actually going to cross many different sectors, but in terms of EOEL Public Pre-K, yes.
So you're the organization entity that is organizing this whole effort, would you say?
Well, I think it's a joint effort with many different people to push the expansion along. Yes, so EOEL is I guess a coordinating body, but it is taking a lot of people to actually move this. There's many different parts of the system that have to move cohesively together.
Have you seen ELB's testimony?
On this,
Yes.
I believe I know what it says, yes.
It defers to your organization,
Mm-hmm.
but your testimony is blank.
Oh.
And I just want to mention that your testimony is the only department, and the only organization like this. So that's not acceptable to me.
I agree.
Okay.
I apologize.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, seeing,
Quick question.
go ahead.
So for EOEL. So just a clarifying question, are you folks in conversations with the Hawaii Teacher Standards Board around licensure issues?
Yes, we are.
Okay, and then what do those conversations look like? Is it kind of a mapping out a 5-year plan, or?
So we have not come to any terms in terms of planning, in
Okay.
terms of like what that includes. But what we're looking at currently is what are the requirements of, there are Hawaii Teacher Standards Board licensure requirements for the Department of Education, and then EOEL has its additional pieces. And so what we're looking at is, based on the current set of teachers, how many people fall into each different category, and if there are ways to look at current credentialing, if there are other comparable ways that could actually increase teacher pool, then what could that be? We're looking at possibly pulling together a work group to have those conversations, but they have not started yet.
Okay, I asked because I'm really interested in that overlay, and especially in terms of teacher preparation. So how can we use, again, federal monies to, at the same time, prepare people for early childhood
Yes.
workforce, and then also that teacher credentialing or licensure processing? So
Yes, absolutely. And the university system actually has a really neat idea about looking at a potentially 0 to 8 credentialing. So those conversations will actually ensue.
excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rep. Members, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, moving on to the next bill, HB 936. This is with regard to the Department of Education. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Financial literacy and the personal transition plans, potentially. First up, we have Department of Education providing comments.
Good afternoon, Chair Woodson, Vice Chair Martin, and members of the committee. I'm Heidi Armstrong, representing the Department of Education. We stand by our written comments, and I'd just like to point out in the comments, we do have 2 suggested amendments that we respectfully request you look at.
Thank you. We
Thank
received
you.
that. Thank you. Next, we have, apologies, the Board of Education providing comments. Not here. Next, we have NGPF Mission 2030 Fund in support via Zoom.
Hello. Thanks for having me today. Chair Woodson, Vice Chair Martin, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today in support of House Bill 936. My name is Christian Sherrill, and I do represent a nonprofit called NGPF Mission 2030 Fund. I'm also a former teacher. We're affiliated with Next Gen Personal Finance, which is a leader in low-cost personal finance education. NGPF's free curriculum is used by over 75,000 teachers in the United States today, including 195 teachers right now in Hawaii. Thank you for Hawaii's work today and in the past to expand access to what I believe is the most important class a young person could take in high school. In 2021, the legislature and many of you helped Hawaii to get a strong foundation for financial education with SCR 152, which at the time urged the Department of Education to implement a 1-semester personal finance course. From that foundation, access to financial education in Hawaii has grown in the last 2 years. Research from another testifier today and a friend of mine, Harley Urban, shows that 6.5% of Hawaii high schoolers today have access to a personal finance elective, and that's up from 0% in 2021. Hawaii is still lagging behind the national movement for financial education, though. In the same time period, 9 new states have added standalone personal finance graduation requirements of at least 1 semester. All of those states, by the way, are local control states with a long tradition of local control in education, but they were able to find solutions that respected local control while also adhering to the needs of students first. My students in my classroom taught me that adults in positions of authority should make decisions with their interests in mind first, and then come up with creative solutions. And I believe that House Bill 936 does exactly that. Plus, there's a coalition of no-cost partners, including NGPF, to help the Department of Education and local schools to implement this legislation. For example, and this is just one tool among many that my organization offers for free, we deliver certification courses for personal finance teachers that over 10,000 teachers have taken to build their confidence and content knowledge in personal finance. Thank you again for the opportunity to provide testimony today, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have the Associated Students of the University of Hawaii providing testimony and support. We have individual testimony from Desiree Encheta in support. If Desiree is here via Zoom.
Good morning, good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Desiree Encheta, a student with Myron B. Thompson School of Social Work and Public Health at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. I am respectfully submitting the following testimony in strong support of HB 936 relating to education. I believe financial literacy for emerging adults is important because we deal with money every single day. Money is a necessity to us. I voluntarily took an accounting elective in high school and was able to learn the basics of money through that class, and I utilized what I learned about basic money behaviors from my accounting class more than what I learned in the required 2 years of language classes I had to take to graduate. And speaking from personal experience, I would have been financially unprepared after high school if I did not voluntarily take a class like that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next, we have individual testimony from Carly Urban, also via Zoom, also in support.
Hey everyone, it's great to see you. My name is Carly Urban and I am an economics professor at Montana State University, and I've been doing research on financial literacy education since 2012, so it's been a while, and I've been doing this before states really started to move. So I am excited to tell you about what some of the research finds and to support House Bill 936. So first, the research really clearly documents the benefits of requiring financial education in high school. So it clearly shows that credit improves, so credit scores go up and delinquency rates go down for the next 4 years after students complete the education. They are also less likely to use alternative financial services like payday loans after they graduate if they've been required to take personal finance in high school. Student loan decisions also improve. So that means that students are more likely to use low-cost methods of financing post-secondary education, like federally subsidized grants, scholarships, things like that. And they're less likely to use high-cost methods like credit card debt and private student loans. And in addition, other research finds that student loan repayment rates actually increase 10 years later after financial education is required in high school. So beyond that, it's kind of exciting that the research finds that teachers' financial well-being after they're required to teach personal finance for the first time also improves. So they're more likely to save. At the same time, I'm an economist. What are the potential costs, right? So can requiring financial education actually reduce the likelihood of completing high school? So what happens after these states have put in a full semester course requirement for students? Well, the good answer to that is nothing. Graduation rates don't change overall. They also, these requirements do not reduce the likelihood of completing high school on time, so kind of on regular track for students from less advantaged backgrounds. So students from lower income families are no more or less likely to graduate from high school on time. And students, non-white students of color, are no more or less likely to graduate high school because of the new requirement. Obviously, teacher training is another cost. Christian already spoke to that a little bit. There are a lot of low or no cost options, free of charge teacher training available, resources available out there. And then there's the obvious cost of the Department of Education's time in kind of managing some of the mandate, if that does go into action. And that's something that kind of needs to work collaboratively. So that's kind of the biggest cost on the table. Another question I get a lot is, does it have to be a requirement or can it be an elective? The research is pretty clear on this too. When there is no requirement, when it's just an elective, the students who select into it are a little bit different and there are no measurable improvements at all. We actually did a big study in Montana on this because we were asking the same question, and we found that just offering isn't enough. And the students that are less likely to have access when there's no requirement are actually the students from the schools with the highest fractions of students on free and reduced price lunch. So that means the highest poverty schools are the least likely to have access to personal finance education. And then the last big question that I always get is, why does it have to be a standalone course? Why can't we put it into something else? And this comes from data, the answer comes from data that I've been collecting over the last 4 years, where we look at every high school course catalog across the entire country, about 10,000 high schools, and in states where they have these embedded requirements. So that means it's not a standalone class, but it's required within something. Only about 43% of schools are doing it. That means that it's really hard to enforce. Schools aren't really sure what to do. They're under-resourced. They don't necessarily jump to that level. So in those states where a whole semester of personal finance is required, 100% of schools comply. So it's a little bit harder to implement when there's a lot more noise going on. So that is my take on the research, and there are a lot of links in my written testimony, so feel free to peruse it in more depth, but I am strongly in support of House Bill 936.
Thank you. Ms. Urban, what organization are you with?
Montana State University.
Thank you. Okay, we have individual testimony in person from Dawson Honda in support.
Good afternoon, Chair Whitson, Vice Chair Martin, and members of the House Education Committee. My name is Danson Honda, and I'm a former student member of the Hawaii State Board of Education, testifying in strong support of House Bill 936. I grew up in a single-income family of 4. For the first 20 years of my life, I didn't know what it was like to sleep on an actual bed. I slept on a fold-up mattress on a living room floor because a small one-bedroom apartment was all that my family could afford. As a child, I believed that going to school, getting good grades, and going to college was the key to success. I was a straight A student throughout most of my school years, and I thought that if I worked hard enough, I could achieve anything. About halfway through high school, I got involved in student government, and I interacted with students from all walks of life. I realized that there was something very important missing from our education system, but I couldn't quite get what that was. I often asked myself, if working hard, getting good grades, and going to college was a key to success, then why do so many people who do these things end up struggling in life after high school? I became disillusioned with our education system. I began focusing more on what was going on outside the classroom than inside the classroom. My grades slipped, and by my senior year of high school, things weren't looking great. I have a secret to share with you folks. I didn't walk at high school graduation. I had to take a remedial class over the summer to officially graduate. According to our education system, I was a failure. Fortunately, I was able to get into college, But by the time I was halfway through, I was in a financial mess. Isn't it interesting how 18-year-olds with zero financial knowledge are able to open credit cards and get into student loan debt? Just like many people before me, I learned things the hard way. But I was determined to make a change. I started to learn about how to manage my finances. And I didn't learn that from my parents, and I certainly did not learn that in school. Not even going to business school in college helped me with that. I learned how to manage my finances for free on YouTube. I learned about budgeting, saving, investing, and all the other tools that are necessary for financial success. Suddenly, a lot of things made sense. I realized that my education up until that point had been missing this critical piece, and that our education system had left me ill-equipped to face the financial challenges of the real world. I realized that working smart to somewhere rather than working hard to nowhere was what would really make a difference in my life. After graduating college, I started looking for a job early 2020. We all know what happened in 2020, COVID. I applied for job after job. I worked so hard all those years to get that college degree, only to find out that employers didn't want to hire me anyways. But financial literacy taught me one very important thing. Times change, and relying on one source of income and one career pathway is very risky. Financial literacy taught me that I needed to prepare to adapt and overcome. While most of the world was panicking, unsure of what to do, I identified many opportunities that were available during the pandemic. 2 years later, despite being jobless and broke with 5 figures in debt at the beginning of the pandemic, I bought a single-family house in Pro City at 24 years old. And I did it by working as a food delivery driver. After the pandemic is over, the world will continue to change in unpredictable ways. But the need to know how to manage finances will remain constant. What you make is important, but what you do with what you make is just as important. Looking back, I'm grateful for the financial knowledge that I gained and the positive impact that it has had on my life. And now I am passionate about sharing that knowledge with others so that they too can experience the life-changing benefits of financial literacy. Please vote in support of this bill. Mahalo.
Thank you for your testimony. We have testimony also from 9 individuals, all in support. Is there anyone else wishing to provide testimony on HB 936? Members, any questions? Question for the Department of Education, please. So can you please, just for the edification of the public, can you explain what a personal transition plan is?
Okay. It's a graduation requirement. It's half a credit, and in this situation, we're looking at using that personal transition plan entity to help record what the students, or to keep record of and evidence of students having met the financial literacy requirements that we set forth for high school. Thanks to the working group and from previous legislation, the department has made some headway in adapting the Jumpstart financial literacy standards into having a draft copy of program standards for financial literacy, which will allow us to determine what is expected when we say a child has had financial literacy in their high school experience. And if we have these defined program standards and what is expected, then high schools will have more flexibility in how they offer financial literacy. We do have a elective course, an ACCN course in financial literacy, We know that our JROTC programs incorporate financial literacy, but what we still need to finalize is what is expected. What are we expected to teach, and what are the kids expected to know and be able to do when we say they've completed financial literacy in their high school experience. So our work ahead on this would be finalizing those program standards, and then the plan to date is allowing high schools to determine whether they have a separate course, whether it is embedded in other courses, but our record-keeping tool would be that the evidence of them completing the work required to meet these standards would be recorded in their personal transition plan, which is a graduation requirement. To do this, we need a coordinator to help. So we have in our board budget request, we requested a position to help coordinate this, convene the continued work groups, and help clarify and put in writing our expectations, also monitoring that schools are moving toward the implementation of this. And we would need minimal funding, 10,000, 15, for neighbor island travel to support our neighbor island schools in this effort.
So you're working on this. Is the ACCN elective offered at all high schools?
No.
It's not. How long have you been working on this plan? Because this bill comes up, or a version of this proposal comes up year after year.
Right. I think within the past 2 years, with the start of that working group, and hearing actually the testimonies and the difference that financial literacy makes, has really prompted the department to get this going. And the challenge is we need a lead to help solidify the momentum that is taken place to date.
So is your plan that you're going to, I assume, go in front of the Board of Education, is it to offer financial literacy more robustly throughout the system?
Yes, and so every graduating senior would have evidence of completing a financial literacy program within their high school experience, though that program may look different depending on how the high schools structure it. The standard would be our program standards, so that everyone knows what the expectations are when we say we are offering financial literacy to every student.
So then what's the effect of your recommended proposed change to this bill? If you
I think it's just clarifying language. I don't think it's changing what the bill is expecting.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you. Mr. Honda, please. I have a quick question. Thank you for your testimony. I know that you're a former board member. The board is suggesting that this is a topic that they should consider and approve. Did you go to the Board of Education regarding having them look at this particular issue?
Hi, the conversation of financial literacy has come up many times over the years, as far back as 2015 and possibly even further back, and nothing concrete has been done. A couple of months ago, when the board was in the process of creating their new strategic plan, I came to the committee meetings, the community meetings to testify, suggesting that since we're making a new strategic plan, that we should add somewhere that there should be a financial literacy requirement. So I did testify that at the community meetings, as well as in person at one of the general meetings, at the DOE headquarters, and still nothing has been done. Yes. And then I can't answer the question of how many schools are offering the elective course.
Please go ahead.
I checked every single high school course catalog. Of the 40 plus high schools, only 8 have under course catalogs, and one of them is not currently offered. It's starting next year. Yeah, so only 8 out of the 40.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions?
Chair.
Please go ahead.
I have a question for the BOE if they're here. Anyone from the Board
I don't
of
believe
Education?
they are not here.
They're not here. Okay. Well, I have concerns with their testimony, but never mind. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, members? Okay, please go ahead.
Mr. Honda, please. Thank you for your testimony. And
Thank you.
I was wondering if you know other organizations that are offering financial literacy?
Yeah, so there are organizations that offer financial literacy courses. Of course, one of them being one of the testifiers, Next Generation Personal Finance. But there is also, I believe, some local credit unions. They offer some type of financial educational things for students. Previously in SCR 152, it was suggesting that the DOE coordinate with DCCA to implement a graduation requirement plan. So so they may have some other programs as well.
Because I know several organizations, private organizations, that are offering financial literacy.
Yes, there are many, and many would gladly offer it for free, free of cost for students and teachers.
So, but if DOE would be doing it as part of curriculum in the high school, then that would be great. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, moving on to the next bill. We have HB 744, DOE and Booster Club audits. First up, we have the Department of Education providing testimony, offering comments.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Chair Woodson, Vice Chair Martin, and committee members. Brian Hallett, DOE CFO. On behalf of Superintendent Hayashi, the department stands on its written testimony with comments expressing concerns regarding the expanded scope of the department's internal audit office and the potential implications and ramifications of that change. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. We also have late testimony from DAGS offering comments. That's all I have. Is there anyone else? Oh, please go.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, my name is Ron Sheigi. I'm representing Comptroller Keith Regan and the Department of Accounting and General Services. DAGS stand by its written comments in this testimony, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's all I have on my list. Is there anyone else? Members, any questions? Okay.
I have a quick question for CFO Hallett. So this bill arises because of a specific incident, and I'm wondering, given that these booster clubs benefit from their affiliation to the schools, and they have activities on school grounds involving school parents and use the school name, there's a public perception that the schools endorse, support, and are connected to these booster clubs. Even though they might legally be independent. So my concern lies with the public perception and who the public holds accountable when we see misappropriation of funds by booster clubs and booster club leadership. So I'm wondering, so if both the DOE and DAGS is saying it's out of our hands, I'm wondering who you think should be engaging in auditing these clubs, or what you think the remedy would be, because I think that they operate unaudited, and there's huge opportunity for malfeasance. So, what are your thoughts?
I think this is a good conversation to have. I think the department shares the reputational risk concerns that you're expressing for sure. HRS 28.5.2 is an area to take a look at. That's the Attorney General section where it talks about the role of the Attorney General in relation to public charitable organizations, and that may be a place to start. Not completely saying we want to be part of this conversation, but that is currently the structure that exists for that oversight.
So I'm wondering, so are you saying then the schools play no role in the creation or the perpetuation of these booster clubs?
No,
That's not my experience being on a high
no
school
role
campus at
or-
all. So they were intimately involved in the financial workings of our school, to the extent that administration was using those funds for purposes for which they were not intended. And I'm just gonna say that, you know, you folks may say it has nothing to do with us, but in operational fact, it has. So I wanna know what you folks are gonna do about it.
Understood. I think this bill is specifically speaking to expanded role for internal audit or the Attorney General's office. There is another bill that I think the committee has already acted upon, and to look at a trust fund. A statewide trust fund which is a potential area that can help if there's an umbrella organization similar to something like Friends of Public Libraries that can play a role to set standards for these outside organizations. That's something that the committee has already acted upon. It was an administration bill.
Yeah, I saw that bill. It came through this committee.
But that would be my quick first
So that's your
suggestion
answer,
on
is
yeah.
to use the trust fund bill.
If that's an area of concern for this committee, yeah, that's one area or one way to attack the problem.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, moving on to the next bill, we have HB 744, HB 77, HD1, with regards to, this bill actually clarifies that charter schools charter school teachers are a part of bargaining unit 5. First up we have is DHR Director Hashimoto, providing comments.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Brenna Hashimoto. I'm acting in my capacity as the Chief Negotiator, and we provided comments related to this bill, and so I'll stand on our written testimony and be available for any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have HSTA providing testimony and support here in person.
Hello, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Osatui, President of Hawaii State Teachers Association. Nice to be here. I just want to say, we've been bargaining with the state, and oftentimes this has been problematic. All we're asking for is a simple amendment to the definition of our bargaining unit. The definition right now just says, under the Hawaii State Department of Education, but we have so many of our members who are also under the public charter schools. When they say, you can do a supplemental, when we bargain the agreement, the salary schedule applies to the charter school teachers. The health benefits we do apply to the charter school teachers. We don't engage in supplementals there. So if these apply to those charter school teachers, why wouldn't we just go out and say it? We've been trying to bargain to get language in the recognition article of our contract to just say, and public charter school teachers, and that's been rebuffed every single time. And so that's why we're having to come this way to try and get that addressed. There's some, I'll say, smoke screens being put up, like, if you put charter schools for them, you're gonna have to put charter schools in different, for other bargaining units. I will say that our friends at UPA, for example, their Unit 7, their definition specifically says the faculty of the University of Hawaii and the community colleges. For us, we just want it to be the Department of Education and the public charter schools. That's it, simple. We only bargain for those. To say that, we're gonna have to put in others, we're not saying that you have to put community colleges into all those other definitions, right? I mean, that's just shibai. And so with that, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President, for being here. Next, we have HDA providing comments. I don't think that they're present. Okay, and we have about 6 individuals, all providing testimony in support. Actually, 6 individuals plus 3. Anyone else wishing to provide testimony on this bill? Seeing none, members, any questions? Okay, please go ahead.
For HSTA. Oh, so did you guys talk with AGs about this?
we've been told what the AG has been telling the department, but we haven't been able to talk directly with the AG about it.
Okay. Can DOE weigh in on this then? Or I don't know who's been talking. When it came through our committee, or my committee, the parties were supposed to talk and kind of work this out to see if we could make this bill not necessary. I'm just wondering the status of that, if anyone knows.
We haven't had those conversations yet with the AG's office.
Okay. If the AGs are listening, please follow up.
Yes,
Thanks.
please.
Dihar, please. If you can please kind of expand upon your testimony and what you feel the direction we should go.
Sure. So our comments are essentially that this measure is not needed because the inclusion of the public charter school teachers into Unit 5 is actually already covered by statute. It's in Chapter 89-10.55. We also have an arbitration decision which affirmed that. And I think the prior testimony in another committee was that there are no real issues around this. Perhaps there were many years ago, but they've since been resolved and clarified, and so we feel like it's unnecessary at this point.
Thank you. HSTA. So in your discussions that you have had, in your challenges, have you referenced that statute, and what has the response been?
That we don't represent charters, that the charters are separate. We're just here representing the Department of Education and the state. And if you want to do anything with the charters, you can do supplementals with them. That's true, we do supplementals with the charters, but like I said, when we negotiate the master agreement that deals with all kinds of different things, those apply to the charters, and that's when you can use a supplemental to modify the master at the charter school. But still, these apply outright, so why wouldn't we just say it? And why every time we put on the table, okay, then let's add in that this applies to charters, we get no every time.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other questions, members? Seeing none, moving on to the next bill, we have HB 1043. This is the DOE and COVID reporting requirements. First up, we have DOE providing testimony in support.
Good afternoon, Chair Whitson, Vice Chair Martin, members of the committee. I'm Heidi Armstrong, Department of Education, and we do stand on our written testimony in support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Next, we have Department of Health providing testimony in support.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of this measure. We stand on our written testimony and stand by for questions. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. We have testimony from 3 individuals, all in opposition. Is there anyone else wishing to provide testimony on HB 1043? Okay. See none. Members, any questions? See none. Moving on to the next bill, HB 1047. This is with regards to the Department of Education and autism reporting. First up, we have Department of Education providing testimony in support in person.
Good afternoon. The department stands on its testimony in support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have the Hawaii Disabilities Rights Center offering testimony in opposition. And we have testimony from Together for Our Keiki offering comments. Anyone else? HB 1047. Okay, seeing none, members, any questions? Seeing none, last bill, HB 262 HD1. This is the school placement for military families. First up, we have DOE offering comments.
Oh, hi. Good afternoon. I'm the Heidi Armstrong, Department of Education. The department stands on its written testimony, offering comments, but I'd also like to respectfully add to that and suggest that this be brought to our Joint Venture Educational Forum, or our JVEF partnership, as well as to the Hawaii State Council for the Interstate Compact. And in front of those 2 forums, we'd be able to have both military representation, community representation, and department representation to see how we can address these issues. We do recognize that our military impacted students do face additional challenges, and we're looking at these 2 established forums that we already have to bring these issues forth. The concern in putting it this specific in a bill is some situations may vary from either school to school or school resources. For example, when one of the recommendations was to allow students to who've been in transition, who are military impacted students who are in transitional housing, to remain at their original school if they've attended after 14 days. School A may be able to do that because they have the room, and they could offer a geographic exception or allow that student to continue to stay after the family has moved. Another school might continually feed from this transitional housing, and so as they allow students to stay, the housing still gets more people, and they might not have the space. So there are all of these intricacies that need to be addressed, and doing that at JVEF, or it could even possibly be an agendized item for the Interstate Compact to discuss and problem solve solutions for these issues.
Okay. Thank you so much. Next, we have testimony from USDOD offering testimony and support via Zoom.
Good afternoon, Chair Woodson, Vice Chair Martin, and members of the committee. My name is Kelly Mae Douglas, and I'm with the U.S. Department of Defense, speaking in support of HB 262 HD1. I will stand on my written testimony. However, I'd like to clarify that the intent of this initiative is not to provide a privilege or entitlement over students who are already attending school, but to ensure that military children are able to preliminarily enroll and register in school and apply for programs based on their anticipated permanent housing by authorizing a temporary waiver of proof of residence requirement until they arrive to Hawaii. Related to the concerns stated about geographic exceptions, in order to ensure the stability of students who are relocating from temporary to permanent housing and who have already attended this school for 14 school days or more, we're requesting that the student be able to finish the current school year. If the student has not attended that school for that period of time of 14 school days, or upon conclusion of the school year, if they have, they would then be required to change schools to their zoned residential area unless they apply for and receive a geographic exception. The second thing I'd like to point out is that in working with the 38 states that have already enacted this policy since 2016, we have not heard of any serious implementation issues from school systems, but we have heard resounding praise and appreciation from military families who are able to use the provision prior to moving, that it has reduced much stress and anxiety that they have previously experienced as they move from state to state every 3 to 4 years. Lastly, I appreciate Superintendent Armstrong's comments and collaboration. I've enjoyed participating in the JVEF and the Interstate Compact Commission over the years. We've discussed this issue several times in these venues. Additionally, well, with JVEF, it's been discussed, and I think one thing that can, be shared is that, as we work with the other states, there's definitely things that can be done to kind of really address the unique situation in Hawaii. So I welcome those conversations as we work together to establish regulations that would implement this policy at the state level. Finally, this issue has been already found not to be covered under the Interstate Compact, so unfortunately we haven't been able to address this particular need for military families. But I do stand by to assist and continue discussions. Mahalo for your time and consideration. I stand by to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Lastly, we have Military Affairs Council offering testimony and support. Not present. That's all I have. Is there anyone else wishing to provide testimony on HB 262 HD1? Members, questions? Quick question for US DOD. You're still here?
Yes.
So in
Chair.
thank you so much. In your conversations with JVEB, do you feel that there hasn't been any traction with addressing your issue, and what is the mechanics of your issue?
So, in terms of your first question, Chair, I appreciate your question. I think everyone, honestly, is that forum is a best practice. We speak about the JVEF all the time across the nation. So I just want to give kudos to everyone that participates in that venue. I think everyone agrees with the intent. It's just a matter of working the logistics. I think one thing I've shared before is that in working with other states, we acknowledge and recognize that there might need to be some changes and some modifications that make it work for the local community. So that's kind of where it's been, just haven't been able to move forward in terms of developing that policy. But again, I welcome that opportunity. Chair, I'm forgetting your second part of that question.
What is the genesis of this proposal? What is the challenges that you're trying to address?
Yes, Chair. So what we've experienced over the years is, or heard from families, is that because of the timing of military assignments, which usually happens generally, and they happen around all times of the year, but generally the military families receive, or military service member will receive orders to relocate to Hawaii in this early spring, let's say February through April, May timeframe. And that assignment is typically assigning those families to arrive a few months later. It does vary. What we would like to see is that military families can enroll, or preliminarily at the time that they get the orders, and understand and know that they're coming to the island, rather than having to wait till the end of the summer, perhaps. And we find that courses are often full, or school capacities have been met or reached before they arrive. So that's really the intent, is to allow for a temporary waiver of proof of residence until they arrive.
That's clear. Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, see none. Recess. Thank you. Reconvening for decision-making on several bills. First up, we have HB 961 HD1. This is the high-quality early learning opportunities expansion. Members, I know that there are several concerns with regards to the accreditation piece and other proposed amendments, but for now, we will pass this as is. It already has a defect date. Pass as is. Questions, comments, concerns? Vice Chair for the vote.
Chair recommends passing HB 961 HD1 as is. Chair, Vice Chair vote aye. Rep. Capella.
Aye.
Rep. Martinez.
Aye.
Rep. Matayoshi.
Aye.
Rep. Peruso.
Aye.
Rep. Quinlan.
Aye.
Seeing Rep. Todd is excused. Rep. Garcia.
Aye.
Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to HB 936, financial literacy, and the personal transition plans for DOE students. Members, even though the board is suggesting that perhaps this is their venue, I'm going to pass this, continuing the discussion, incorporating department's recommendations and defecting the date. Questions, comments, concerns? Vice Chair for the vote.
Chair recommends passing HB 936 with amendments. Seeing that Rep. Todd is excused for the remainder of the hearing, are there any noes or reservations? Reservations from Rep. Peruso. And Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to HB 744, Booster Club audits. Members, per DOE's testimony, I'm going to recommend that this authority be placed in the AG's Tax and Charities Division. That's to prevent any potential conflicts. We're also going to make this applicable for booster clubs that raise more than $50,000. There are some smaller ones that do not have the manpower needed. It might potentially impact them negatively. And defecting the date to the standard defect date. Questions, comments, concerns? Vice Chair for the vote.
Chair recommends passing HB 744 with amendments. Are there any noes or reservations?
Reservations.
Okay, hold on. Quinlan and
No vote.
no vote.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to the next bill, HB 77 HD1. This clarifies charter schools are part of bargaining unit 5. Members, I would like to pass this unamended. We acknowledge HGEA's concern, but because of the title relating to teachers, we cannot include their amendments. Questions, comments, concerns? Vice Chair for the vote.
Chair recommends passing HB 77 HD1 as is. Are there any noes or reservations? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to HB 1043, Department of Education and weekly COVID reporting. We really are in a different place right now, so I'm going to recommend passing this, defecting the date. If we need to, we can reinstate the weekly reports. For now, defecting the date. Questions, comments, concerns? Rep. Matayoshi.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I clearly have some concerns over COVID still. I'll be voting with reservations. I think that the pandemic has changed, certainly, but it's certainly not over, and I'd like us to continue to take it seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, concerns, questions? Vice Chair for the vote.
Chair recommends passing HB 1043 with amendments, except for Rep. Matayoshi's with reservations. Are there any other noes or reservations? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Going on to HB 1047, autism reporting in the DOE. I'm attempting to find some middle ground, and the recommendation is to make the report semi-annually. Defecting the date. Questions, comments, concerns? Vice Chair for the vote.
Chair recommends passing HB 1047 with amendments. Are there any noes or reservations? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Last bill, HB 262 HD1. This is pending transfers for military families attending DOE schools. Members, I would like to pass this as is. Questions, comments, concerns? Vice Chair for the vote.
Chair recommends passing HB 262 HD1 as is. Are there any noes or reservations? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you.